What's up, guys? This is Tom Burkhardt from car-revs daily, going out for a drive review on a car I've absolutely fallen in love with. So let's start this off. This is the 2019 BMW X4 M40i. So let's start this off with a little launch start. All right, so in S, off, hard on the brake, launch is active. Ooh, very, very quick machine. 4.6 seconds to 60 miles an hour from 355 horsepower and 369 foot-pounds of torque from this 3-liter turbocharged inline-six. Ooh, and it is a hell of an engine. As we know, this is the B58 motor that has won so many converts and so many fans in the new 340, as well as a tuned version of this, I think, is in the M2, and a bunch of other BMWs as well. Because it's awesome. It just has oodles of torque. It's super balanced, super smooth, sounds really good. We've got the drive in sport, as well as the gear lever over here in S to the left, which is extra sporty, so it does really aggressive downshifts coming up to corners on your behalf. And it's better than the paddles. It's better than I can do on the paddles, that's for sure. So this is that 8 HP, the ZF automatic transmission that is in everything from the Dodge Chargers to the Aston Martin Vanquish with over 700 horsepower. So awesome transmission, awesome drivetrain. Of course, X-Drive standard. So let's pump the brakes. What is the X4? What does it compete with? And how much does it cost? And then we're going to talk about why I fell in love with the truck this week, and then talk about any sort of things that you might want to consider, any disappointments or quirks, of which there are very, very few. So what is the X4? It's BMW's sports activity coupe, medium-size SUV line. The BMW now has the X1 through X7 represented with every number taken. So this is obviously a lot bigger than the X1 and the X2. Based on the platform of the X3, this new X4 has the fastback roofline and really good equipment levels for pricing that is about $5,000 more than a comparable X3. So the X3 starts at about 42, and with the turbocharged 4-cylinder and a sprint to 60 of about 6 seconds, whereas the X4 has the same base turbo motor with 248 horsepower and I think 258 pounds-feet of torque, but stickers from about 51 is the base for the X4. But it's got an X-Line package, which otherwise would be a couple $1,000s. All the X3s and X4s for this generation are standard with all-wheel drive, which is cool. It's BMW's X-Drive system, so it feels extremely rear-wheel drive at all times, but it can send power to the front to even things out and really keep you just on perfect keel. Ooh. One more thing about launch control, and then we'll go back and talk about competitors of the vehicle and how it's really different than the X3. So the launch control, you think that it is just like, put it in sport, traction control and stability totally off, and then foot hard on the brake and foot hard on the gas, and then you go. But that is actually not the case. In this car, and I guess in many BMWs, in order to get the actual launch flag to pop up, you have to you have the car warm, you put it over in S, you tap the traction control button. You don't hold it down, just one tap, and then foot hard on the brake and foot hard on the gas, and the flag will come up. And at that point, you have 3 seconds to either launch it or it'll bail. But it really, really works. This car is really amazing to drive at all times, especially on country and twisty roads like this. It's just a dream in your hands. So there's a lot of obviously sporty SUVs out there, and hopefully you can hear the exhaust popping a little bit too. It's got a pretty shouty growl, as you can hear, that is slightly enhanced with the speakers, but very lightly. It genuinely, with the windows down, this is how the motor sounds. You hear it popping? about that time. But it's usually crackling away back there like a firecracker. Oh, I got it over an M. Usually popping away back there. It sounds awesome, and Banish is one of the critiques that people have had, that BMW's turbo engines have not been vocal enough. So definitely banishes those critiques forever because the car sounds so good. And it should. You know, this car has to compete with vehicles like the GLC 43 AMG. It might look like it's raining right now, but these are all love bugs. There's like a love bug, you know, population explosion down here in South Carolina, and they're everywhere. I just cleaned the windshield, and they're already obviously gunking it up again. So this car competes with a couple vehicles, most primarily with the Audi SQ5 and the Mercedes-Benz GLC 43 AMG, either in the SUV version or the GLC 43 AMG coupe. So, it is faster than both those cars. The SQ5, the launch control is kind of addictive. It really does shoot you off the line better than just a brake torque launch. Okay, so quicker than the SQ5, which is a 5.1 second sprint to 60 miles an hour, and then the GLC 43 AMG, which actually has 385 horsepower versus 355 for this motor, is slower. It is about 4.7. So we're at 4.6, which is amazing. To get any quicker than this, you really have to go and spend a lot of money. Macan S, I think, is also like about 5.0 dead. And Durango SRT is one of the only other vehicles that can really compete, and it's not even in the ballpark. It's like, I think it's like 5.3 or maybe 5.5. So definitely one of the quickest cars out there, and a lot cheaper than the Macan Turbo, which gets you down to about 4 seconds dead. And the upcoming first ever X4 M and X3 M that are coming for the 2020 model year, that have 480 something horsepower for the base, but then we'll do it up to 503 horsepower with the competition package, and give you either a 4.1 second sprint to 60 or a 4.0. So that's only half a second, whereas, you know, versus the base car, you got almost 1.5 seconds. Very, very noticeable, and it really just along with all the other M Sport and M Performance, I should say, upgrades really take this between an M Sport and a full-on M car, because it's so much fun. So a lot of stuff to cover here. A lot of stuff. I just love it. I absolutely love it. It's hard to convey how much I love it. Okay, so X4, more just about it. So this M40i comes really, really well equipped with like almost everything you really need, genuinely, for $61,000 as a base. And then this test car, okay, so that was like a non-launch control start, right? So I'm just like what they consider like a rolling start, like a 5 to 60. There's definitely like delay. There's a little bit of delay where it's like, are you sure? Whereas with that launch control, I mean, it obviously just gets those turbos, or that the turbo really spinning like bonkers. Oh, hold on, I wasn't in S. The turbo spinning up like crazy, and it just rockets you off the line. I mean, it's just a little party trick. Launch active. Oh, it just pulls so hard right away. You can even feel it sending power to the front just to like grapple away and try to get grip. So our test car goes from about the $61,000 base. It's got $2,000 sandstone paint, sort of like tannish gold, and then we have the 21-inch wheels, which each of those things are about $2,000. And then we have the executive package, which is heated seats in the front, heated steering wheel, parking assistance, a bunch of parking stuff, and then and I can't remember what the last thing is. And then in addition to, so that's $3,700, or you get the premium package with all that stuff without the parking crap for like $1,700. Anyway, with all that stuff, basically, this car is about $69,000. I don't know. I don't really have a window sticker on this baby, so I'm not sure exactly what it's coming in at. But I priced it out several times, and that's where I think we are. Some things that anything that we're missing at that price, the only thing is cooled seats, and those are a $350 standalone option. So definitely select that. And then I didn't see it in the menu, but Apple CarPlay might still be an individually selected option that you have to pick outside of the packages and stuff. So definitely be sure to get that. We'll talk about the Apple CarPlay at the end, which this car does not have. But it has really, really great phone integration. So, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so X4 then, we got its competition, we got the price. So what is its differences versus last year and then versus the X3? Okay, so versus last year, it's like almost 3 inches longer. It's a little bit lower, about 1.5 inches wider, and has an extra inch of legroom in the back. Yeah. Have it popping away. All right, so an extra bit of legroom in the back versus last year, and is a very, very comfy vehicle overall. Sorry, I got distracted. Crazy fisherman here on the road course, handling loop. Okay, so it's wider, longer wheelbase than before, and with a little bit of extra room. And then versus the X3, it has a little bit more front leg room, but it's down like I think it might be down 1 inch in leg room versus the new X3, and it's also down about 1 inch or 1.2 inches in headroom back there, and then in shoulder room. But genuinely, this car is perfectly practical. The only big thing that you'll notice, or you might notice if you look at the stats on paper, I didn't really notice. The trunk looks big, genuinely, even with this fastback shape that is about 0.03 smoother in the coefficient of drag. It's like a 0.33 plays like a 0.30 for this M40i, which is really awesome. At high speeds, that becomes really manifest. It really makes the car a lot quicker in passing, above 80 miles an hour. So those are some of the downs. But so it has 10 cubic feet fewer in the trunk, basically, versus the X3. So this is like 18.5 with the seats up, and then I think maybe 60 with them down, and the X3 is 29.5 with the seats up, and maybe 70 with them down, or it might be 50 and 60. I'm not sure. But so it's basically a little bit smaller back there when you look at the overall cargo volume. And for passenger volume. Oh, we'll turn around in here. We're not doing any off-road today. Even though we've got the same ground clearance, same approach and departure angles that give this car genuine off-road ability, but with the 21-inch wheels and this brand newness of the car, I don't want to take it off-road. Or even onto that little sandy bit. It's also just not that great for video. So X3s. So why would someone buy this car versus the why would someone buy the X4 versus the X3? It's a good question. I mean, it's really about style and distinctiveness. This X4 wears the new sort of like swoopy L-shaped three-dimensional taillight that's also visible on the new 3 Series, 850 Z4, and a couple others. So it's got a really cool tail end. Obviously, it looks great from the back with that really chopped glass house. It looks a lot more polished than the previous model. It just looks a lot better than the old X4, which was pretty good looking. So this one is just a real head turner. Looks very cool, and it's rare in the U.S. I was looking at the numbers for the last couple of years, and it's in the U.S. it's sold about between 5 to 8% of the annual total of the X3. So that's like nothing. I mean, they only sell like 4,000 or 5,000 copies of this thing a year, which I think is less than the M3 and the M4. So definitely very few of them on the road. But then I was looking at European numbers, because obviously these Europeans, the Europeans who we love, really like the sports activity coupe segment. I think for the aforementioned reasons of better aero and just maybe just overall less stigma versus just driving a big boxy SUV. And then they also might just be coupe shoppers, people who really like the coupe aesthetic. Well, because there's got to be some reason. I mean, the new Cayenne coupe just came out. Obviously, the segment that BMW basically invented is now populated by Mercedes and you know, and almost Audi now with the Q8 and other vehicles that are in the pipeline. So sports activity coupes are getting really big. The GLC and the GLE from Mercedes are taking some mind share as well. I really want to give this person in front of us time to run, but they are driving slow as fuck. A pass might be required. So they really like. What are you doing, buddy? They really like the sports activity coupes, and I think it's because they have that top end power and the reason we mentioned, just for coolness and then just not being so school marmy. So, and how much do they love it? I don't know if I said this, but it's between 30 and 45% of the X3 total is what they sell in X4s in the last couple of years. So that's a lot of cars. That's a lot of X4s. And they really like it. So I can see why. But you know, as a U.S. consumer, it's really distinctive. It's really rare on the road, and it looks really cool. It's still fairly practical with 3 seats in the back, genuinely just about the same roominess as the X3, but a little bit tighter in the shoulder area. And I mean, there's basically no downsides and all upsides. So I like it a lot. For growing families, I think it'd be really, really good. So why else is it so amazing? Well, basically, besides this B58 M40i engine, you also get to enjoy M adaptive suspension, which is standard. So it gives it a really cushy ride and adaptive and comfort, even on 21-inch wheels like we have on this as an option on this car. It really does. It really rides great in comfort. It's a tick more firm and precise than. I mean, you could kick the tail out of this car if you wanted to. If you had everything off, you absolutely could. It's a little bit more firm than the X3, and feels like it has a little bit lower center of gravity. They have about the same curb weights, and center of gravities are not published, but it feels like it's just a little bit feistier. That little bit crisper to really make the performance just extra animated and alive in your hands, which is really a great thing because the X3 itself is super fun. I mean, the X4 M40i was one of my favorite cars tested when we did. Also, video on this channel, check it out. And this X4 just builds on that. So in addition to M adaptive suspension, you got like the I think an M adaptive rear diff or M Sport rear diff. Special big M performance brakes, silver calipers, and bigger discs and different compound brakes. That stop like a wall. All right, we're gonna panic stop. So this car will stop as well as go. So it's definitely cool in that way. The brakes hold up. There's no brake fade at all, even driving hard. Forgive me for all these bugs on the windshield. They're called love bugs because they're little black bugs with a red head, and the girls live for like 3 days, and then the boys live for only a day. So the girls will mate with the boys until they die, until they flick them off, and then they'll mate with others before they also die, or spawn and then die. So I thought that was kind of a grim existence for the dudes, but then I was talking to my friend and he's like, that would be the happiest life you could ever have. You're dying at like your happiest moment. You wouldn't even know anything else except like pure pleasure. So that's kind of true. So yeah, these love bugs are everywhere, I think because of the hurricane. There's lots of standing water. So those are the reasons, or some of the differences and the unique offerings that the X3 and X4 bring to the table. But this X4 just feels a little more special about it. And everything on this car, it's so funny, you can judge BMW's style. First off, this car looks good. But you can judge their style, or like, fanboy judge them from as like an armchair expert of being like, oh, they don't do this anymore, oh, they don't do that anymore. But these cars are amazing. They're some of the best cars on the road, and it's literally like, a feature, all these features are not created equal. You know, like LED headlights, for example. All LED headlights are not created equal, and the ones in a BMW, for example, with this like adaptive cornering thing for the LEDs, are just outstanding. They're just the best headlights in the world, and that goes true with like all of this stuff. I mean, steering feel, brake feel, handling feel, acceleration, transmission, engagement, you know, eagerness, smoothness, telepathy, like all that stuff is just the BMWs are just better than regular cars. They really are. So getting in one is always good after you know, sampling some other stuff in the market, because it really just reinforces how awesome these vehicles are, and makes me think something that I've thought many times when I'm behind the wheel of a BMW, which is, why would anyone drive anything else? Like, once you drive this car, it is so much objectively better than other vehicles. You know, why would you even bother with something else? And I think that absolutely holds true, and that's like the most resounding praise I can give for a vehicle, and this X4 definitely earns it. It's so fast, so fun, but also can flip into like pretty chill. You know, like we can go to adaptive, no more pops from the exhaust, no more, you know, engine growl from up front, not as sharp over bumps, steering gets calmer, everything just kind of chills out. I've even been driving in, I mean, this is so sacrilegious. We're gonna go to this, over to this like kayak launch right at the edge of the ocean marsh thing over here on the left, coming up, and then we'll get out and do some talking walk around. Okay, so but yeah, so I've even been in EcoPro for some of my commute, which is like sacrilege. Like, how could you do that to us, Tom? You're supposed to be at the foot of the floor all the time. And you know, it's true. You can still floor it in EcoPro, but it kind of gamifies the act of driving efficiently by sort of dulling that throttle, and by changing these gauges to between, you know, basically what your average fuel economy is, and then what you could potentially achieve like up to 90. And then as you're slowing down, it flips into just recharge, because like many BMWs, this vehicle only turns on its alternator when you're decelerating, so it doesn't have any negative drain on power when you are accelerating like other vehicles. It only charges the battery as you're coming to a stop, when there's just like, you know, excess revs to be used for charging the battery. So then it'll show you when it's going into charge. It's not a hybrid, but it just sort of works. The stop start, like another example of like all these things not being created equal. I mean, this stop start, like if you fart or like wink at this thing while you're at a stoplight and the engine's off, it is back on so fast you wouldn't even know it. You honestly, there's no lag. You just step on the gas and go. So that's another really cool thing. But in EcoPro, obviously, it's extra aggressive about it. It'll turn off the engine even as you're coasting up to a stop, and then it shows you how many extra miles per gallon you've earned from your very prudent and responsible driving. So it really dulls the throttle response, but like if for an emergency, like you can obviously floor it. So then it goes to red, so obviously much worse than the 18.5 that I've been averaging with my foot on the floor. And then, but in most times it's gonna be, as you're driving calmly, between 50 and 90, and then you're really like, okay, I'm saving the planet. This is a spin one. I think that might have been the one I wanted. Yeah, so you know, you can. It's just really. Oh, we'll do the next one. It's just great. It's just better than other cars. It's fun, fast, loud, and can flip to just being also really comfortable and chill. Oh no, I gotta go back this way. So it's not a boy racer car either. I mean, so it looks different. Instead of any kind of bright work, it's what's called cerium gray, and this is a nice transition towards like any things that you might have noticed that you wish were different. So that cerium gray is really cool. It's sort of like a nickel finish, dark gray for the mirror caps, the hood extractor, or the air extractors in the fender, the kidneys in front, and a couple other details. So it looks really cool, but one issue with living with the car is it doesn't dry right. So like it's really hard to keep clean. It gets water spots super easily, and it's just overall it's just harder to keep clean than I expected. So that's something to on the wish list. And then I also just kind of love the way the black kidneys look, and having the black kidneys is what the standard look for the X4 and X3 M will be. So it's just kind of makes sense that you would want to emulate the flagship model as much as possible. But again, this is not a boy racer car. This is a luxury SUV that happens to have perfect handling and ferocious acceleration. So it does all that stuff really, really well. Man, I've never seen. There's this pretty high water here. So this is all like a tidal marsh. Ocean is like a mile that way, but there's nothing here. So these transitions are great. So one other thing, without CarPlay, the one thing I really love about CarPlay is that you can have Google Maps and show satellite-based mapping imagery. So you can do that with the X. Although you have to go into the settings, it won't do it when everything has been reset. But you can go into the settings and have the nav show satellite stuff, which looks beautiful and is perfect. But look what happens when you zoom in. See, then we just go back to map. So that's not ideal. Anyway, alrighty. Well, let's hop outside and take a look at the car. Alright, don't know how this is gonna work with all the wind. Hopefully you can still hear me. Just a quick annotated walk around. So look at the bugs that unfortunately at their end where our drive right there. So definitely some big action going on in South Carolina. Home of the all BMW X model production. They employ, I guess, 11,000 people over at the Spartanburg plant now. So X4 just looks really, really cool. We got the wide angle 4K going, so it's not the purest look at the design, but it does show the key elements. Just a beautiful machine. Of course, I'm really a sucker for awesome drives. Of course, we just are here watching somebody in a Bug guy WRX wagon. So I mean, and I would have driven that thing no matter what it looked like, because it just drove so well. It was so fun and so fast. But so I think that might be happening with the X4. It just drives so great that I can't help but love it to death, and I do. I know you will too. So this is the really distinctive element. Is this tail portion? It looks very cool. I'm a fan. The Bossback black pipes are nice. So we can take a look at the trunk. It's pretty big. I mean, it seems big. And then beyond that, you've also got big underfloor storage as well. Got hands-free. Okay, so we can release the seats from back here, which is pretty nice. Extra power port there. Just very well finished, like all BMWs. And it's a real champ. I'm a big fan of this vehicle. In case you haven't been able to tell by this 30 minutes of praise, but go give this car a drive. I think that its distinctiveness on the road, the rarity versus X3s, and then of course just how awesome it drives will win over a lot of people. All right, see you guys next time. This is Tom Burkhardt from Car-Revs Daily.